That's how
Yes.
my mom was, or my aunt, or my dad, and that's how I'm going to be now too. It is not an inherited thing. Also, we cannot force ourselves to go to sleep.
Are you overwhelmed by motherhood and barely keeping your head above water? Are you confused and frustrated by how all the other moms make it look so easy? You can't figure out how to manage the chaos in your mind, your home, or your family. I get you, mama. Parenting with ADHD is hard. Here is your permission slip to let go of the Pinterest-worthy visions of organization and structure fit for everyone else. Let's do life like our brains do life, creatively, lovingly, and with all our might. When we embrace who we are and how our brains work, we can figure out how to live our lives successfully and, in turn, lead our families well. At the end of the day, we just want to be good moms. But, spoiler alert, you are already a great mom. ADHD does not mean you're doomed to be a hot mess, mama. You can rewrite your story from shame spiral to success story. And I'll be right here beside you to cheer you on. Welcome to Motherhood in ADHD. Hey there, successful mama. Welcome to today's guest episode with Heather Erickson. Heather is a sleep coach at Sleep and Beyond Consulting, and she's also a member of our community in Successful Mama Meetups. Now, a few months back, we were in a chit-chat group in Successful Mom Meetups, and another mom was like, hey, I know it's not what we're doing here, but is it okay if I ask you a question about sleep? And I was like, well, hold on, let me check with Heather because I'm not trying to make you work here. You're showing up for support, you know? And she was like, no, I love talking about it. And she gave the best advice to this other mom. And I was like, this is why this community matters. This is why we started the community, is for other moms to get together and lean on each other. And I was like, oh, that was so sweet of her. So then a couple months later, when she's like, could I be a guest on the podcast? I was like, heck yeah. This is such a huge struggle for moms, is sleep, especially when you have kids with ADHD. Now, we're going to dive in today from, starting with big kids and how we can help set them up for success in their sleep and moving into that transition, because transitions are hard for us. We also talk about being a mom with a baby or an expectant mom. How do we prepare ourselves for dealing with the newborn phase when we aren't getting any sleep? Because sleep deprivation is a real thing. And diving into the practical things that we can do to make sleep easier for your family. So no matter if it's you that struggles with sleeping or some of your adorable humans in your house, this episode will give you practical tips to make that baby step towards having sleep be a little bit easier. Let's welcome Heather Erickson to the show. How are you doing this morning, ma'am?
Hi, Patricia. Good. I'm doing good. Thank you.
All right. So when we think about sleep, this is such a sore point for so many people with ADHD. Obviously, sleep is different through all the different stages of life. If you were to look at the wide variety of people that you've worked with and all the sleep problems that are going on, is there one thing that jumps out at you where you're like, ooh, if only people knew this about sleep, it would make things so much easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there is for sure. And that is to do with all the things that I help moms set up for their babies to go to sleep. So there's a lot more to it than just telling a baby to go to sleep, right? So there are ways to set so many things up to be such a good situation and such a good environment for the baby. And those are the things. And so all the things that work for the baby work for everyone else too. So those are the things that I would like people to know for sure.
So that we can, no matter how old we are, create this environment that makes sleep easier. And it's not necessarily there's no magic answer, but the combination of preparing everyone to move into this different phase.
Yes.
Is the magic. I really love my bed. I'm sure that has something to do with it. So let's dig in. So if we think about those ways that we want to set up for our amazing sleep environment, how can we help create that space of hey, we're transitioning? Because side note, a lot of times with ADHD, the hardest part for us is that transition point of whatever we were doing before, and now we're slowing down and shifting from doing to not doing. And like this is a really big struggle for a lot of us with ADHD. And obviously babies don't even know how to human yet. So how do we create that environment to let them really peacefully move into sleep?
Yeah, so some of this is connected to how our brains work. And so it's easy peasy. But before I get into that, I wanted to tell you the difference between how we would look at it for when older kids. So I would want to tell you what we do with older children first.
Okay, well, let's start there then. Big kids, what are we doing?
Especially, I don't know if any other moms out there, I have a feeling I'm not the only one, that it works better if there's a signal or a sign that tells them it's bedtime rather than any words coming from my mouth. So that's a great trick to use, and one that does both things. It does that. Also, it's helping their brains have a signal that it is ready. It is time for your body and your brain to get ready for sleep. And that is turning the lights off or down. So, especially if you have a child that is extra active or takes longer to calm down, sometimes that can be connected, I think, to anxiety, which can be connected. There's connections, right? So, they will try it for your kids. So maybe you only need half an hour ahead, but the turning down of the lights lets them know we're going to transition into bedtime. Plus, it sends a message to their brain that it is going to be time to sleep.
Mm.
It's the darkness and dim light. It needs to be that way for a while. So, just flipping off the lights, as you know, is not enough.
It's not a
So
10-second warning system. Okay, got it.
that's right. So for my family, we would do that. We had been doing that about an hour ahead of time. So sometimes, depending on the season, that means drawing curtains. Or if you don't have dimmers, it means taking light bulbs out of some of the light fixtures if they have too many and are too bright. There's ways around it. Or putting, as long as your light bulb isn't hot, putting a towel over the lampshade, things like this that you just do that once and then that job's kind of done and that's how it is. It's not always pretty, but it works for sleep.
Mm. So creating that shift in the light, I'm assuming there's some kind of science behind why our brains like connect in. So like why does that I'm like I want to jump into the science, but I don't know how sciencey we're getting into that. Like what does that do for us? Like what's the because when we have
Yeah,
ADHD,
I can
if we
tell
don't
you.
know why, then we're like, why am I doing this? And I'm not doing it. So like why is that so important for us to shift into a lower light environment as we
Yes.
are moving into sleep?
Yes, the why. So I didn't realize that that probably is an ADHD trait of mine, but I am a person who also likes to know the sciencey part. But I usually don't share the sciencey part because I am usually the sleep nerd, right? I am the one who cares about the science and not so many others. But in this case, I will let you know that this is about boosting your natural melatonin.
Mm.
So that's what it helps do is to boost your natural melatonin. Yeah, that's the science behind that.
I'm sure like most of the time, if you're a sleep deprived mom, you're like, I don't really care about the science. I just need this kid to go to sleep, man.
This
But
is
I'm like,
correct.
but right now we're not in panic mode. So now I can be like, ooh,
That's
tell me what's
right.
going on. So
Yeah.
things like, lowering the lights are going to get us to like get our bodies moving in scientifically in the right direction towards sleep. What else can we do to support our big kids in moving into sleep?
Yes. So for big baby, adult, anybody, we're going to use warmth. So we want to warm up the body ahead of bed, probably 20 minutes to half an hour before, and then go to sleep in a cooler room. So that change in body temperature is another thing that does boost our natural melatonin. I also wonder if people know that we have natural melatonin or if everyone thinks it is something we just buy off a shelf, Anyhow,
Yeah.
not everyone, but so like I think with the things I hear today, I wouldn't know if I wasn't a sleep consultant, is what I'm saying. So
Mhm.
that naturally boosts that melatonin, and melatonin helps us go to sleep and stay asleep.
Okay. So moving into low light, creating warmth, and then coolness. So that change in body temperature. What else would be a really great way for us to help our kiddos move into sleep?
Yeah, moving into more darkness, away from the light. warm and then sleeping in a cold room. Well, the thing I wanted to explain at the beginning, but why would I go in order when I'm an ADHDer, is that
I'm like, I assumed there was a reason. I figured we'd get there.
routine. So in sleep, it helps also. So you're always going to do the same thing, or you're going to try to, and you're not going to beat yourself up if you don't do that. You're going to try to do the same thing each night so that your kid, it becomes the routine really, and this can happen for babies when we do the same thing over and over, and they can know what to expect next when we've done it enough, and it's a really cool feeling for them because they're like, I guess this was the next thing, and it was, and then it's also soothing for them.
It's really safe feeling.
Yeah. So that happens for all of us. And it really can be a like inside their mind and body. It's just sending a message like this is time for sleep. And so your routine doesn't have to be too long. 20 minutes is ideal. Again, if you're doing this for 2 hours, you don't need to beat up on yourself. Or if you're trying to do it for 2 seconds, please also don't beat up on yourself. Every family is different, unique, and so are you. And I like for parents to consider what works for them and what there's so many factors, things about your own schedule and what time work is or school or daycare or all those things, and what we're doing in the season. So people often do different things in the summer. Man,
Mm.
we're looking forward to summer than they do, other times of the year too, or Christmas. And we cover those kinds of things in my communities about how to deal with that too.
So as we think about setting up routines, which can be hard for us, is the point of the routine to do the same order of things, or is the point of the routine to be done at the same time of day? Like, where's the goal? And maybe it's both, but like, where's the part that we want to hone in on for like those of us who are like, routines, that's hard. Where's the point where
Yes.
we want to like focus our efforts, I guess, so that like
Yeah.
you're not going to have the perfect routine. It's not going to go the way you want it every day. But if I'm
Yeah.
looking at like my bare minimum of how I set up this routine for my kids,
Mhm.
where are my like bare minimum markers? Like, what are the most important things that are going on? So
Yeah.
that for the mom who's like, you're like, dude, we have no routine whatsoever. Like, we're not trying to wake
Yeah.
up tomorrow and be new people. We want to build
Nope.
that, but it's got to start somewhere. So, like, where would we
Sure.
start so that it feels more doable?
Yeah, I would definitely start with one thing, and that's something that we love doing too at Sleep and Beyond is taking baby steps for us adults also. That's the way I have found that I've gained traction or made any change is by doing tiny, tiny ones and having people cheer me on a bit. I like the community behind me saying, reminding me to do it or saying, you can do this,
You
Heather,
can
or
do
you're
it.
doing it. 'Cause sometimes we don't notice the good things that we are doing
Yeah.
until we tell someone else or they point it out to us. And so that is why I don't know what I was going to say next.
No, so the like, where's that baby step to start? Are we focusing on the same
Yeah,
time? Are we focusing on like the same
I know
order
what I
of
was going to
things?
say. Yeah, I know what I
Yeah.
was going to say now. So I like to call it a soothing sleep sequence when I'm referring to the routine before bed.
Ooh, I like that.
And
Soothing sleep sequence. Oh, that sounds
yeah,
so peaceful.
soothing sleep sequence. So, like you
Yeah.
asked, yes, it does need to be in order, ideally. So, still, if something happened that it didn't work that way, that's not the end of the world. You just move. That's how you do it tonight. Tomorrow, you see if you can do differently. But I would start, especially when starting new things is tricky, I would start just with the light because it's such an easy one. I would start just with a light and see if it makes somewhat of a difference. And you can talk to your children and you can say how the darkness helps your brain to feel more sleepy. And I don't know if I noticed, well, I do now because I've been doing it so long with the darkness. So I need to do it for myself. And I guess the only caution is that when you have really little ones and you're really tired, when you dim that light for them, you are going to be so tired too. So when you come out of that, you maybe want to turn the lights back on for yourself. Yeah.
Yes. I remember that, especially when my kids were in that phase of like you were staying with them for a while before you leave. And like I would be so tired by the end. I'm like, why am I so tired and you're still awake? Because we were creating
Yeah.
this soothing sleep sequence.
Yeah.
And I was the one being soothed to sleep. They're like, let's go. Um, so that's funny. I'm like, there's so many times where I was like, I could just fall asleep right now, but no, I gotta get up and brush my teeth
Yes.
and pack
Yeah.
lunches and stuff. So
Yeah. So if you have to, if you need to get up, if you can't, stay relaxed and do your own thing in the evening, then you you might want to, brighten the lights, and that'll help perk you up. So it's a sequence. And what about the time? The time can be different. So a lot of people also would think that a bedtime has to be this time all the time. But the truth is that most of the children in, probably, I can easily say, North America are not getting enough sleep for what is recommended by our pediatricians. So they have come up with guidelines. There's guidelines in Canada and the US that are very similar and made by pediatricians. A group of them came up with it. And since I've been doing this work, it has changed, and they add more, even with more screens and more bright lights. And those things do interfere with sleep. It interferes with our ability to go to sleep, but also staying asleep. So you might be somebody that says, oh, I can do that. And then I go to sleep, then you wake up. We forget that sometimes that can be the reason still, waking up because your eyes were on a bright screen. TV's better, like a TV, better than, your phone or tablet. And if anybody has if you go to the movies, that kind of screen, a projector screen is actually best. So it's
Interesting.
just worth knowing if depending on what you're doing.
I didn't think about that. The fact that like the light is shining on the wall versus the light shining at you. I'm like, oh, I never thought
Yeah.
about that. Okay.
Yeah.
So you said you wanted to move from big kids first. Is there anything else we need to know about big kids before we move to the next group?
I did call it a soothing sequence, but definitely you want to put things in there. This is another thing that will help motivate the both of you, is that if you have things in there that are things that you like and your child likes, you
Mm.
know, don't do something that you're going to dread. Like, just because somebody else down the street always reads a book for bed, and that's not your jam, don't do it. Maybe you have a little song that you love. Maybe you just want to hum a tiny tune. There's so many different things, and I give so many ideas in my ending bedtime battles, in a new class that I'm offering. Anyhow,
Okay. So we don't have to do it like everybody else does. The key is not that it needs to start at a specific, like it's not like if we don't start at 7:02, we've ruined
that's
it.
right.
It's about the sequence and creating these soothing things that both feel soothing for you and your kid.
Hmm.
Any other
That's
good
right.
tips for big kids?
The just about the time. Some of the timing, depends on your own schedule, but also it depends on what we do in the daytime.
Mm.
So again, if you have an active child, that outside air, fresh air, and movement. So what they're doing, activities or exercise, but basically outdoors and movement, can make them go to sleep better, stay asleep better, and you might need an earlier bedtime for those days that they have a lot of that. And if you're trying to change bedtime or do anything, that's going to set them up for success if you really run them hard outside.
Does it matter what time of day we do the activity in
Yeah.
comparison to our sleep?
It does. We want to do that. We want to keep it away, just like the screens. We want to keep it away from bedtime about 2 hours, ideally, for screens, and exercise even 3. But you're not going to stop your kid from running around the living room if that's what they're doing after supper, or. But
Yeah.
if you're, yeah, just not don't make a point of doing it about a couple hours before bed,
Okay.
ideally.
So ideally, we're looking at a little bit before.
Yeah.
Okay. What's next, ma'am?
Let's talk about my favorite group to work with, which is moms who are expecting a baby. Might not be their first baby even, could be their third, whichever, but the moms who are expecting, I love being able to work with them because this is a way that I can prevent the most trouble, and not in just sleep, but in parenting as a whole. So, when I was able to get my children sleeping way back, I got my baby sleeping, and it turned our world around. It was like a night and day difference. And our baby was just so much happier, content. We hadn't seen much contentment yet. And so the sleep made a huge difference, which also motivated us to keep sleep, as a priority, because it just did make such a difference. And
Mhm.
And so that was awesome. And then I just kind of thought, like, okay, like sleep is the be all and the end all, and I have the world by the tail. This is a cat's ass, like no problem. However, that's not how life continued to go. And so once I had to go, I always wanted to offer the communities the way that I am right now. But sometimes I was in the thick of it too much to be able to do that. So I had to have a little bit of time, somewhat looking back and see what were the things that I learned along the way that made this motherhood journey so much easier. And that's why I've got community in within my classes. So I know from being in your community, Patricia, I love that support. I need it. And I've been in a few groups where I've had like a great, knowledgeable, supportive leader, and that makes all the difference for me. So I don't want anybody to miss out on that piece of it.
And I think it's important, like when you're saying like that community piece matters, not just from you having people to talk to, but also that there's people around that get the struggles that you're going through and that you don't feel
Yes,
alone. Like if you feel
yeah,
like you're the only one who has the baby that won't sleep or the only 4-year-old that won't sleep, it's really isolating because you're looking around going, well, how come everybody else can figure this out and not me?
yeah.
But
And
you're not actually talking to everybody else. We
no,
want to find those people who are also dealing with the same things. And I think as a
that's
mom, it's even more helpful to be like, because it's not just your problem, it's
mhm.
your kid's problem. Then you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm ruining my kid because I can't. No,
No,
this is something that so many people are dealing with. And when we find the others that get it, then it's like, oh, well, not only do I feel seen, I feel heard. I know that I'm not alone in this. You know that it's not you, but you also get that whole community of great ideas. Then they're like, well, have you tried this? This works for my kid. And it's not the usual, like, well, yeah, everybody already tried putting blackout curtains on the wall. Like, what do we like really need to do here? I need advanced level advice, not works for 90% of the kids' advice.
Mhm.
So like that piece of it, I think is so important, especially when you're a mom who's not sleeping because your kid's not sleeping.
Yeah,
You need that connection.
for sure. And sometimes it's the commiserating together, or like I
Mhm.
mentioned before, sometimes it's the congratulating each other or celebrating the things that are
Yes.
going well and noticing those tiny things, tiny steps that are getting you moving forward.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, to have someone celebrate with you, like, hey, my kid slept for, like, if you're like comparing, like,
Yeah.
hey, they only woke up 4 times instead of
Yeah.
6 times, other people would be like, what? 4 times? And then you don't
No.
feel celebrated. But when you've made progress from 6 to 4 times, you're like, this is a big win for us. And having those people around you to be like, yeah, we get
Yes,
it. We're here for
absolutely.
you. Like, that's really,
Yeah, for
really good
sure.
for
And don't,
ourselves.
yeah, please don't feel alone if sleep trouble is happening for you. This is common. This is a thing, and it's nothing that you did or didn't do. With new babies, that's something I want. It's awesome for, I think, the moms to know ahead of time, is that it doesn't matter what you do. Your baby, like, when they're new, they're meant to be awake and sleep day and night. So if somebody tells you they've got their days and nights mixed up, well, I guess they do, but that's the way they're wired. That's the way they're supposed to be. And
Yeah.
it's a safety mechanism, and that's okay. And if your baby does sleep longer than what I'm saying here, that's okay too.
Yeah.
There's really no need to panic, and everybody's situation can be so unique. So knowing that your baby is going to be awake, and it's hard to not sleep. We can't change it about the baby, but we can encourage you to look for different supports, or maybe ways of doing things that can alleviate and give you a little bit more rest. So if you know what to expect, then as a new mom, you're not as much sitting there wondering. You kind of know what's going to happen with
Mhm.
sleep, and you kind of know that, okay, this could be hard, but there's things I can do to make it better. And there's people I can reach out to for help if I need it. And there is hope too. Just know there is hope, because come half a year in. So once your baby's around 6 months old, and I know half a year does sound so long, but once you become a mom of older children, it's a short time. But don't let people tell you enjoy every minute, because we all know that is not encouraging to the mom that's in it. Then you know that at 6 months, that baby could be sleeping through the night if everything's set up great for them. There's that possibility.
Okay. So as a mom who's expecting, what are the things you're like, oh, if I could just tell you like one thing or two things, what's going to get the mom who's expecting off on the right foot to be set up? Because like we think about it, like when I don't know about you, but like when I was expecting, I feel like I read a bazillion pregnancy books, but I didn't read enough information about like what was going to happen after I actually had a baby. Like I was so focused on being pregnant that I forgot like, oh, right, there's a baby coming and I need to learn how that happens. Like pregnancy is so short. I
Yes.
really should have been paying attention to later. So like what are the things that an expected mom can do to prepare for the fact that she's not going to sleep a whole bunch in the first few months? Like how do we set that mom up for success?
What do you do when you're really struggling to calm down? When you're dysregulated and your brain is offline? When Medusa Mom is about to rear her ugly head and you don't want to yell at your kids again, but you also desperately need some time and space to yourself? Well, you're in luck, Mama, because I've got a free video resource waiting for you. I'm sharing my top 10 tips for what to do when you're losing your cool and you need a reset. Each of these things you can do in under a minute with no fancy prep, so that you can calm down enough to make a different choice than exploding like a volcano on everybody in the vicinity. Now, since it's a video, you can watch what I do for easier practice, and of course, there's audio plus captions to read it. I also have a little cheat sheet underneath of all the ideas, so you can grab that list, stick it in your phone somewhere, so that on the time where you're like totally freaking out, you can go to that list and quickly pick the idea that's going to help you calm down in that moment. Head over to patriciasung.com/calm, that's C-A-L-M, and download your free video on how you can keep your cool when you're overwhelmed. That's patriciasung.com/calm. Because you can learn how to take care of yourself so that you can take care of your family.
One of the things I talk to moms about, so this is kind of the beyond part of my business, Sleep and Beyond, because this is not about sleep, but I teach them a little bit about our nervous systems. And isn't it odd that we have a baby, things are set up so that if we hear a baby cry, it makes us move. That's something we can't control. It's something wired into us that we hear a cry and we better go for it. And so it can also put us into fight or flight, basically. Like it's a panic. That's a natural thing. That's our nervous system, but we can make that easier on ourselves. So that's some of the things I go through with the moms. So if you're someone listening right now who has a new baby, and maybe you hear your baby stir and you jump, but you don't need to. So the best thing that baby needs is for you, when you do come over to them, to come in a nice, calm, soothing way to them. And you're not hurt. They're in a safe place. You're not hurting them by just not rushing it. So I am guessing, I don't know for certain, because there was a lot of sleeplessness and that affects your memory, but I am pretty sure that when it was our first, I likely practically ran to the crib or the wherever they were, and concerned, right? Like, and now what am I going to do?
Right.
Like when I get there.
Yes.
Um, but the easiest thing for the baby is just for them to pick up on, because they do pick up on it, that the mom is doing good and she's all right and we're okay. That sends them a message that everything's going to be fine. So a big piece of what I want moms to know is that we need to be good to ourselves, talking to ourselves in a positive way, even encouraging yourself. I thought I did this until it was pointed out to me, like, just listen. First step is kind of listen to what you do say to yourself. Oh my. And I think a lot of us do it and it is not encouraging. So bit by bit, again, baby steps, you can start to change that. So you are this baby's mother. You can use your intuition. You know what to do and you can handle this. And do things that help yourself feel calm, do things for you that are good for you when you can, so that you can be enjoying this time with your baby and they pick up on it too.
Like, Heather, where were you when 9 years ago when I had a baby? Because I mean, granted, I have learned a lot in the last, decade about emotional regulation. Like that's a lot of like what my coaching is around. And it's like my first was not a sleeper. Like I felt like he cried all the time. Like I felt like every time we had food, it's like somehow his still baby nostrils smelled food. And then I would never get to eat a hot meal because then he was hungry. Like it just felt so hard. And I think about like how I must have shown up to soothe him with my panic. Like
Yeah,
what?
right?
Like
Yeah.
he was a really loud sleeper. And so every time he would grunt, I would wake up and
Mhm.
in a panic of thinking something was wrong. And here I
Yeah.
am going to him in my panic, trying to get him to calm down. I'm like, oh, I wish I had known that. I wish I had known that. I wish I had known that. That never even crossed my mind of how, as mom, like, how do I calm my kids down? It's by sharing my calm,
Yes,
not my panic. And
that's
obviously
right.
babies they are connected to us in that way of like the physical closeness and everything because there's not the language to communicate with them in the same way. Like I'm like, oh my goodness, oh mind blown. How much easier it would have been. I'm like, also, I'm not mad at old me. If you're listening and you're like, oh my gosh, I do this. Like when you're really struggling as a new mom and things are hard, everything is hard. And so I don't want to like create that like guilt and shame build up. It's like, oh, okay, well, now that we know this, what can we do about it? Because we can't show up calmly for our kids when we're really struggling. So how do we take care of you so that you can be that person who arrives at 3 a.m. and is calm? Like, I mean, nobody likes waking up at 3 a.m., but arriving with that calm, I'm like, oh, how much faster would he have gone to sleep than me stomping in and being like, like, oh my gosh. I'm like, oh man, Patricia 10 years ago really could use this information.
Yeah, and couldn't we all? Like, and
Yes.
there's still many moms out there who could. So I didn't know about co-regulation. That's what we've been talking about just now
Mm-hmm.
until much later, feeling more like, what on earth am I going to do here? And then that was the biggest piece, rather than knowing any other tips like of discipline or anything, teaching your child anything. This is the biggest piece, and that's why I want moms to be able to practice it before their baby even comes along.
Mm. Oh.
You know about the grunting and the noisy sleepers. There's some babies are, some babies aren't. And that is something that we don't learn much about. And there is no need to panic about that, like you said, but how would you know then?
Mhm.
And you can now know, sorry, Patricia, 10 years late, that he was in likely a light sleep. So the first stage of sleep is so light that they can make sounds in it. So it may be that he just grunted because he was rolling over and going right back to sleep, or he never even came out of that lightest stage of sleep and still makes those noises. Kind of like maybe when the grandpa in the home or the dad in the home says, what? I wasn't sleeping because they think they heard everything that was on the TV, but they were snoring.
Yes.
It's so that kind of gives you a good example of how the sleep can be light without us knowing they might not look asleep even. So that's another reason not to panic. So say your baby isn't a noisy baby, or they are, either one, and they stir or make a noise where you think, okay, I need to go to them. You might not pick them up right away or touch them. You might just check it out and see, oh, they're just kind of moving a bit and they needed to stretch and now they're sleeping again. They don't need me right now.
Mm.
So no need to panic.
Okay. So when we think about sleep as a whole, going back to like how we talked about earlier, like ADHDers have to know why. We all know we're supposed to sleep. We know sleep's important, but it's really hard for us. Can you give us this like what are some little nuggets that we can hold on to of like if I'm somebody who struggles with sleeping or I don't like sleeping, why
Yes.
am I even bothering this? Like why is this important and how
Yeah.
is it helpful to us no matter our
Mm,
age? Cuz like this is actually something that I'm working on right now is my sleep. And I'm like I need more information because it's not coming together here. Like why am I doing
yes.
this? Why does it matter?
Okay. Yeah, I love that. So I guess I would start off by saying I was not a good sleeper as a child, and I never enjoyed it probably until I probably never wanted to sleep until I had babies actually. So that would be a
Mhm.
new-ish thing in my life too, a similar age of children. And so what you need to know is that there's hope. I also like to say right away that it's not an inherited thing. So sometimes you
Ooh.
hear, oh, well, my grandma, she was up, at whatever ungodly hour steadily, and that's how
Yes.
my mom was, or my aunt, or my dad, and that's how I'm going to be now too. It is not an inherited thing. Also, we cannot force ourselves to go to sleep. So you make a good point. We stomp into a room and say, like get
Go
sleeping
to
or whatever
bed.
that. Yeah, and we can't make ourselves either. All we can do is look at ways to calm ourselves. And again, it's baby steps and it's being easy on ourselves. Maybe you can feel calm for 1 minute. Maybe it takes you 20 minutes to feel calm. There's different things that you can do. I know for I think I should say ADHD and my body, I do need to move in the day and I do need outside to have my best sleeps. So I got into a tiny habit of doing that, like 10 minutes. And then lately things got super busy and I wasn't able to do it. And someone I was working with gave me permission to look out the door for 1 minute. And I'm like, oh, yes, like that is fresh air and
Yeah.
that is a change. And that's a little tip you can use for regulating babies too and ourselves is just changing the spot and really outdoors does help us that way too. Okay, so why is it important? That's the kind of scary part, but I don't want to scare people with it. It's good to know. So, without sleep, sometimes sleep was used as a tactic in war. Like it's an awful punishment. And so we without sleep, it affects our memory, our mood, our ability to keep our patience, keep our
Mhm.
cool. Did I say memory? Yes.
Yes, memory.
And so all those things, our emotions, our mental health, how we learn, it just is affecting everything. And when all that is having trouble together, it can be really tricky for us. And I also had learned back when that there was a study done to see that actually lack of sleep was contributing to postpartum anxiety and depression more so than the hormone difference. So that
Ooh.
means some interesting things because it could be whoever the caregiver is, could be an adoptive mom, foster mom, could be dad. It's like affecting everyone, that lack of sleep. And
Mm.
so our physical bodies, we have far less energy. We get our immune systems built up with our sleep. And also babies growing. Babies growing, they grow. That's when their growth hormone is released, is at night.
Mm.
And kids too.
Yeah. So it
So we
really
don't
touches everything.
we don't think of it as a need like we do food, but it is so much so similar.
Yeah, like, I mean, I think you pretty much covered every part of your well-being there of,
Mhm.
I'm like, "Man, I really gotta work on this."
And again, don't be
Um,
hard on yourself. Oh yeah, I didn't. What else can I say about, you know, just have tiny little goals. So if you're somebody who's up late, go to sleep. If that's your goal, if you need to go to bed earlier, just change it by 5 minutes tonight. 10, or if you can do 15, don't think, oh, I've been up till 1:30 and now I need to make this 10. Just go down 15 minutes at a time each night. And if you miss a night, who cares? And if you change that up a little bit, who cares? But just notice the progress of going down each night. And if you're somebody who does not like your bed, we don't want you to be in a situation where you don't feel like your room is for sleep. You're staying in it so long, awake in the middle of the night or going to sleep that you feel you no longer are fond of it. It doesn't feel like a place to sleep. So if you can do that, if that has happened, then do this now or try to do this before that happens, is that find a different spot in your house to sleep. Have it be cozy and warm, so you want a let's say, good blanket there, or if a pillow matters to you, things like this where you can easily either take it, what you need, or it's there, and keep the lights all dim, of course, and go there and do something boring, like reading a book, or something like it needs to be a paper, it needs to be a real book,
Yes.
right? Because you can't see those lights. Um, Something that's still and settling. So your book doesn't necessarily have to be boring, but it would help.
Without the instruction manuals.
Yeah. And then when you start to feel sleepy, go back to your bed and just be easy on yourself. Notice what it feels like to feel relaxed. And bit by bit, you can build on that.
I think if I sum up today, it feels like things like understand that your family's different, your family's unique, little baby steps move us forward, and that there is hope there, that it can be better, and that we don't have to stay where we are, no matter what age your kid is, whether you don't even have a kid yet. There are ways that you can make this piece of life that's clearly required a little bit easier.
Yeah, that's right. I love
Okay,
how you
before we go, I have 3 things. 1, I forgot to ask you the question from the community, so I'm going to ask that first.
okay.
So Rachel in the Successful Mama Meetups community asked about your thoughts on melatonin. Like, are you familiar with any like new research that's coming out, or are there certain ones that would be better for ourselves or our kids? And then is there anything else? Like, I mean, you talked a lot about like what are the things we can do, but this is like, it is a really controversial piece of parenting of like giving your kids melatonin, but they need to sleep. But where do you advise parents in this? And like, granted, we already said every kid's different, and you and I are about not doctors. Is this a tool worth using, I guess? And are there any things we need to keep in mind?
Yeah, so keep in mind that the studies on it are limited as far as the use of it in children. And so the melatonin is a hormone, and we don't really know what the long-term effects are. And so I would be on the cautious end of it, especially when there's things we can try that can boost our own natural melatonin. However, if you've tried all the things and and I think that's what I've heard doctors recommend too. If you have tried all the things and do see a sleep consultant, then see what you can do. But the melatonin, lots of people have done it, and you don't need to be hard on yourself if you've done that. Who knows? They could find out that it is fine. It's just the unknown for now. And the light, when we talked about lights, that is a really important piece of it, keeping the light out, considering what things are in your child's room that have a light on it. So sometimes a fan used to kind of muffle any loud sounds, that startling sounds that might happen in your home. It's a great idea, but the fan might have a light on it, the power light. Same with sometimes our light switches are like that now, or the humidifier.
Yeah.
So I just get a bit of electrical tape. It's black and it's kind of small, and use that over top of the light. If you try duct tape, it doesn't really work. Neither does masking tape, neither does painter's tape. So, and if you have a clock, does anyone still have a clock in their room? They often came in red colors or orange, and those ones are actually the best color of light for sleep. If a kid feels like they need a night light and you can't take that away on them, don't just rush out and yank their nightlight from them. But if you can find an orange bulb to put in there, that is best, and maybe you can ease them out of it. We should talk about sleep like we love it. It's not a punishment. It's something we all need and we want this for you. And now I get to go to bed, or now it's you get to go to bed. And many times I've had my children say, I need to go to bed, before I knew that they did. So it's pretty cool when your kid sort of asks to go to bed. And that is not how it is all the time, because they're real children. But it can happen. Yeah.
Okay. So as we wrap up, I think you've given us a lot to think about, of just so many ways that we can start to move towards sleep. But for the moms who are like, please help me, how can they reach out to you and find how to connect with you and get help with you, like dig in and get real help guiding their families towards sleep?
Yeah, I would love it if moms came to my site, and I've got a couple free offers on there. See what you think. Get on my mailing list because I send out I'm calling it a short and sweet sound show. It's like a tiny, tiny podcast. It's going to be encouraging, and it's about like under 5 minutes, just basically to encourage moms to keep on going and a little boost for us in the day. You can find me on my website is my best place. I'm on social media as well, but it's not my preference. And I love to, talk to people, be real, talk to real people. And so it would be great if you chatted with me on my site or emailed me from there.
Okay. So remind us again what the website is.
Yes, so it's www.sleepandbeyondconsulting.com.
Okay. So you got some resources on there for big kids and their overcoming bedtime battles. You've got resources there for moms who have babies, expectant babies. So at any point that you need support in this sleep journey, Heather's got you covered. So let's jump into our lightning round question. So you don't have to explain anything. You just fill in the blank. And let's start with number 1. The best thing that I've read or listened to recently is?
I feel like there's a listen to, and I feel like it might be yours, but I can't remember. Like it was lately. It was very lately. Let me just look.
Most people with ADHD are like, hold on, let me get my phone out. And they're like looking through their like Audible account or their podcast.
Yeah. That's what I'm doing. Oh my gosh. Phone, come on. I have a backup plan if I can't find this. There you are, right on the top in a different place, but no, I'm not going to say that, but I know what I'm going to say. The best thing that I listened to lately was my child singing and humming in our home.
Oh, number 2. My most boring about me fact is?
I prefer baking over cooking. I prefer cooking over baking.
Number 3, when I'm having a rough day, my go-to quote, song, poem, book, podcast activity, whatever is?
It's a tie between a guided meditation that I listen to, story about a forest, or a little like 10 minutes worth of stretches that I do.
Number 4, don't tell anyone I
recently got a speeding ticket.
I have a few of those. Number 5, if I had a magic fairy wand for one spell, I would
have all expectant moms be super valued in our society, as well as supported by a real village.
And number 6, my best piece of advice for mamas with ADHD is?
Be easy on yourself about getting sleep and just see if you can get a bit more and notice the difference in your concentration or your mood.
Well, thank you, Heather. I'm like, every time I hear you talk, you like speak so soothingly that I'm like, no wonder you're a sleep coach. I was like, just being in your presence is so calming. I'm like, it was like you were built for it. So thank you, ma'am. I so appreciate you being here. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for having me, Patricia. This was great.
For more resources, classes, and community, head over to my website, motherhoodinadhd.com.